Next up, Senator Fischer.
Thank you, Senator Thune. Nebraska's orphan county situation makes it difficult for an entire region of our state to access local in-state programming. There are 16 counties in western Nebraska that are assigned to out-of-state markets. And today, some of our witnesses have made suggestions that would improve their companies' competitive positions in the marketplace. However, I'm interested in how we can improve access to Nebraska-based programming for everybody in my state. So if we're going to consider reforms to help the bottom line of cable providers, satellite providers, broadcasters, news programmers, then we should consider ensuring the provision of in-state programming in counties that are assigned to out-of-state markets. And I would ask you, Mr. Schwantes, do you think ensuring this access to such in-state programming would improve consumers' experience?
Senator, that's a great question. It brings up the tricky issue of orphan counties. We dealt with it 20 years ago, and I fear we'll be dealing with it.
And we still face it today.
We're facing them today. My home state of Wisconsin, we've got some great counties in western Wisconsin that are in, God forbid, the Minneapolis DMA. But no, beyond them wanting their Packer games on Sunday, it does affect civic engagement, for example. They're receiving all the news from St. Paul, but they are going to vote in elections either for Senator Johnson or Senator Baldwin, and they want to know what's going on in Madison and Washington. And maybe it's more politics at the local level, maybe the federal level is not the best analogy, but I do believe orphan counties present a real problem. I don't even want to say they're anomalies because they're all across the country of there you are on the border, and instead of being, in my case, the Wisconsin DMA, you're in the Minneapolis DMA. I think there have been attempts to try to deal with this, to petition the FCC for a market modification. It's not perfect, but I think one was granted recently in Colorado. So now that county in southwestern Colorado can receive news from in-state in Colorado versus, I think it was New Mexico. So that is something we do support, and I think it's good for consumers. And this kind of goes beyond consumer choice, but more towards civic engagement.
I would agree with you. We're talking about a fourth to a third of the state of Nebraska, the western part of Nebraska. They're closer to Denver than they are to our state capital of Lincoln. We want all Nebraskans to be engaged in what's happening in our state. Obviously, property tax issues, every other issue affects them, and they need to know what's going on. Mr. Law, based on your knowledge from providing communication services in South Dakota, and you were very familiar with one of the counties in our state of Nebraska. It's an orphan county, Cherry County. What do you think we need to do to look at this?
Well, I think one of the options, Senator, yes, I am familiar with Cherry County. It's wonderful, wonderful territory. I think one of the options to consider is, quite frankly, as part of a more comprehensive video reform discussion, what do you do with DMAs, and have DMAs to some degree necessarily lived out their usefulness as it relates to the provisioning of local broadcast content? I would suggest, I think one thing you could perhaps look at is the Modern Television Act of 2019 that was introduced in the House by Representatives Scalise and Eshoo, would potentially open some markets up to allow consumers to access the content that they want, as opposed to policymakers and, quite frankly, cable providers and broadcasters and others dictating, here's what you're going to get. If you want to purchase and pay for programming from a different market, knock yourself out.
Okay. Mr. Thune, this brings up another issue we have in Nebraska when we look at Scottsbluff and North Platte. They have not received a local broadcast signal on DirecTV, who you represent. Last year, press reports said that DirecTV does not plan to launch any new satellites. Is that still the case?
I believe that's still the case.
Is DirecTV unwilling to serve these markets with local broadcast content, or is there some technological issue?
No, I think, as I said previously, we believe we actually serve these customers. We are in all 210 DMAs. We provide customers in those particular areas the opportunity to get an antenna and pull over the air the signals and integrate that broadcast signal into their DirecTV experience. So we believe we are serving those customers and we are delivering those signals. It's not the way that the NAB perhaps would like us to deliver it, but that's the way we're delivering it. There's other competitive options to go other places if you don't like the way we do it.
It may not be the way Nebraskans that live in those areas that are very rural would like you to do that either. Ms. Barr, if you could respond to this. As you know, in the rural panhandle counties here in Nebraska, Nebraskans rely on satellite TV services, and they're beyond the physical reach of an antenna signal, and they don't have access to cable networks at all. And this is the very point, I believe, as to why launching local channels is so important. A free antenna is not going to fix this. You know, we are looking at residents in rural areas who should really be able to expect to view local channels, just as our metropolitan constituents do as well. Have the broadcasters chosen not to serve our rural constituents?
No, absolutely not. We are licensed by the FCC. We have a certain amount of power that we are allowed to extend. We cannot just arbitrarily decide we're going to increase power and extend the signal beyond what we are licensed to do. If we could, that'd be great, but we are not allowed to do that, and the solution here is really AT&T's choice.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Cherry County, and Mr. Chairman, my last comment. You look at Cherry County. Mr. Law knows where Cherry County is. You look at Cherry County, 6,000 square miles, less than one person per square mile. There is no way that there's going to be a reach of an over-the-air antenna that a free antenna is going to be able to meet. Thank you.